Hi everyone, this is Divya here and welcome to String Diary. So today I'm gonna give you a tutorial on the diamond double mesh stitch. So let's look at how the diamond double mesh stitch looks like. So now you can see this is a swatch that I've already made of the diamond double mesh stitch. So if you can see it is named as such because it forms a diamond in the center, but along with that it has a mesh that is around it. So that is why it is a diamond double mesh stitch. So let's see how we're going to work this stitch, and we're going to call this stitch the DDM stitch, short form for diamond double mesh stitch, right? So let's start with it. For this tutorial I have taken a normal DK weight cotton yarn, 100% cotton yarn, and I'm working with 4 mm hook. So you can work this stitch in any thicknesses of yarns and with the respective recommended hook size. Right, so this stitch is worked in a set of 6. If you're working in rows, it'll be a set of 6 plus 3 stitches, whereas if you're working in the round, it's going to be only in multiples of 6. So I'm gonna do say around 24 stitches chains here. So I've done a slip knot and I'm going to do 24 chains. So let me just finish 24 chains and meet you back at the end so that we can start with the diamond double mesh stitch. So now I have completed 24 chains. Now since we're going to initially I'm going to show you how to work this stitch in rows. I'm going to continue with the additional chain 3 that is required. So you have chain 3 that I've added to this, and now I'm going to start working backwards for the diamond double mesh stitch. So I'm going to work in the 6th stitch from the hook. So now this is the chain this is the loop that's on your hook. So we're going to start counting from that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the 6th stitch, and in the 6th stitch I'm going to create a cluster. So now this cluster is going to be a combination of 2 DC. So that is 2 double crochet. So I'm going to do 1 double crochet in the same stitch, then I'm going to do another double crochet, right? And then chain 2, and then 2 DC again in the same stitch. So this cluster is going to be a set of 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 double crochet in one stitch, right? So now you can see that I have a cluster in the 6th stitch that I've created, right? So now we're going to continue doing the same thing. I'm going to skip 5 stitches, and in the 6th stitch I'm going to do another cluster. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in the 6th stitch I'm going to do another cluster. So just make sure that your work doesn't turn. So between the 2 clusters there is no additional stitch that is required. So 2 DC, chain 2, and then another 2 double crochet. Right, so I'm going to continue doing this throughout. So I'm going to skip 5 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to do a cluster in the 6th stitch. So that's 2 DC, chain 2 and 2 DC again. right? So now you can see that we have started forming the clusters in each of those chains, and we're forming the lace bit by bit. So again, 1 2 3 4 5, skip 5 stitches, and in the sixth one do your cluster stitch. So now at the end, what you're going to have is you'll have a remainder of 3 stitches, and we're going to skip 2 stitches from that and work a double crochet in the last stitch. So now if you can see, I have 3 stitches remaining in the end. So I'm going to skip the 2, and in the last stitch I'm going to work a double crochet. So now if you remember, the chain 3 that we did at the start counts as one double crochet at the start, and then we have 4 clusters here, and then we've done another double crochet at the end. So now this is your first row. Now the DDM stitch is worked in a set of 2 rows, 2 alternating rows. So 2 rows combined together form one part of the double mesh stitch. So now for the next row, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm going to start working on to the next row. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet in this double crochet stitch that we made in the last row. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet, and then I'm going to do chain 3 and do 1 double crochet in between this chain 2 gap. So if you can see this chain 2 gap that we had of the cluster, so I'm going to do 1 double crochet in that gap. Right? And then I'm going to chain 3 again, and I'm going to do a single crochet in between these 2 clusters. So there is no stitch here in between these 2 clusters. We're just going to work in this gap that you can see. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that gap. I'm going to create 1 single crochet. And I'm going to continue this throughout. So we're going to do chain 3, 1 double crochet in the center of the cluster, that is your chain 2 gap. Chain 3 again, and then I'm going to work a single crochet in between the 2 clusters. Right? So chain 3 again, double crochet in between the chain 2 gap of the cluster, the center of the cluster. Then chain 3 again and single crochet in between the 2 clusters. So last one, we're gonna chain 3 and do a double crochet in the center of the cluster, chain 3 again, and I'm going to do a single crochet in that gap between the cluster and your chain 3 from the previous row. Right? So now we've completed our row 2, which is if you see now the second part of the mesh is created. Now I'm going to continue the next row, and I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So now we're going to continue similarly the previous row, that is the row 2 that we did. So row 1 was all the chains that we made. So row 2 was the clusters, row 3 was the chain 3 and double crochet that we made. Right?
So we're going to do
double
chain
crochet in
3.
that stitch. Now I'm going to skip all of these 3. So I'm going to skip the chain 3s and I'm going to work a cluster stitch like we saw the previous row. I'm going to work the cluster stitch in the double crochet stitch that we have. So I'm going to just insert my hook and do a cluster stitch, which is your 2 double crochets, chain 2 and 2 double crochets. Right, so we have a cluster on top of the double crochet stitch. Now next I'm going to skip all of these stitches. That is, I'm going to skip the chain 3, the single crochet and the next chain 3 and go directly into the next double crochet. So we worked in the first double crochet that we had. I'm going to go and work directly into the next double crochet. I'm going to skip all the stitches in the middle and go and work directly into the double crochet and create another cluster stitch there. Right, so we have 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 double crochet. Right, I'm going to continue doing this all throughout. So now that I have reached the end of this row, I'm just going to do a double crochet in this last single crochet from the previous row. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that single crochet and create a double crochet. Now that we've completed this row, it's just going to be a repeat of alternating rows of row 3 and row 4. So we're just going to keep repeating row 3 and 4, that is the chain 3 and double crochet row and the cluster stitch row. So we're going to keep repeating this for the desired number of rows that you have, and that's about it.
So I have completed a swatch here of a couple of rows, and then you can see how the diamond double mesh stitch looks while we're working in the rows.
So I'm just going to include a written format of this stitch in the next slide, and you can screenshot that and continue working on this stitch and watch the video ahead. So now I'm going to show you how to work the diamond double mesh stitch in the round. So for this, as I had mentioned, that we're going to do only a multiple of 6 chains and not multiple of 6 plus 3. So in this, now I've created 48 chains here, and I'm going to go and join to the first chain that we have here. So I'm just going to go and join this. So now we have a round, and I'm going to work the DDM stitch in the round. So now after we've joined, now we're going to start with the rows, and we're going to start with chain 3. So here is where we're going to add that chain 3 from as compared to what we were doing in the while working in the rows. So I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to start working. Instead of the 6th chain, I'm going to work in the 3rd chain of your base. So I'm going to work in the 3rd chain and create a cluster there. So rest of the instructions are pretty much the same of creating the cluster, which is which is 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 double crochet. Just the start and end of this row is a little different in terms of when to chain 3 and when to join and how to end the row. So the cluster stitch is your 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and then it follows the same directions that you skip the next 5 stitches, and in the 6th stitch you do the cluster again. Skip 5 stitches, in the 6th stitch do the cluster. So I'm going to continue doing all of that and meet you at the end of this row to show you how we're going to close this. So now that I've reached the end of this row, I'll have 3 stitches remaining. So I'm going to skip those 3 stitches and I'm going to go and join to the 3rd chain of the chain 3 that we had created. So I'm just going to go into that 3rd chain and I'm going to slip stitch and join the row. Right? And then I'm going to continue the same way. We're going to do chain 1 for the next row. We're not going to turn our work. We're going to continue working in the round. I'm going to create 1 single crochet in that gap. Right? And I'm going to continue with the same instruction for the next row. That is chain 3, a double crochet in the center of the cluster. Chain 3 again. And single crochet in between the 2 clusters, right? So we're going to continue doing the same thing throughout. So that's chain 3, double crochet in the center, chain 3, single crochet in between the 2 stitches. I'm going to continue this throughout and meet you back at the end of the row to show you how to join and work the next row. So now I've reached the end of the row. I've done the last double crochet and I've chained 3. And now instead of doing the single crochet in between the 2 stitches, I'm just going to insert the hook in the first single crochet that we did. And I'm going to slip stitch to that single crochet and close the row. That's it, right? And then we're going to continue with the same instructions for the next row, which is we're going to chain 3 and create a cluster in the first double crochet, skip all the stitches to the next double crochet and create a cluster into the next double crochet. And we're going to continue throughout the same way and close the row by slip stitching into the 3rd chain of the chain 3. So that's the only difference between the cluster stitch, between the double mesh, diamond double mesh stitch as you're working in the round versus working in the rows. Just the start and end of the row is a little different. So I'm just going to include a written format of this stitch in the next slide, and you can screenshot that and continue working on this stitch. You can use this stitch as a part of the lace and linen tote bag, the pattern for which I will be putting it up in the description box below. So this is like, if you can see, this is the whole texture and the fabric that the stitch creates. If you like this tutorial and if you want more tutorials from me, hit the subscribe button to my channel String Diary and like this video, and let me know in the comments below if you whatever stitch you want as a tutorial, and I'll definitely make that for you. So thank you so much and goodbye.